Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
I don't know if you remember COVID a couple of years ago. The reason I laugh is there's a period of time if you use the word COVID in a video on YouTube, it would get dinged by the powers that be. And so for a brief period of time on this channel, I would say, due to recent events in the news, and then I would talk about something like this. But we can talk about it now. Of course, it's ancient history. But Barbara sent me notes. Steve, check out the story from KIRO. Leader of near $7 million pandemic fraud scheme sentenced to 5 years. And of course, there were all kinds of financial things happening during COVID where they were trying to help businesses get by. And although they were well-intentioned, we heard nothing but scams and frauds and ripoffs where people who didn't have companies and had no employees would get millions of dollars to help pay their employees through these hard times. And I heard stories, and I covered quite a few of them back then, of people who were doing things like, well, they would get all the money to keep their phantom employees in the payroll and then go buy a house with it or a couple cars, things like that. So this story here is by Frank Summerall. And he says, the leader of a fraud ring that sought to steal more than $6.8 million in pandemic benefits from nearly every major pandemic assistance program was sentenced to 5 years in prison by the U.S. District Court in Seattle. And the scary part was I heard from people who had legitimate businesses who tried applying for this stuff and they couldn't get it. And they were told, oh, we're sorry, but the pot is now empty. We've already paid out all the money we can. And of course, a lot of that had been paid to fraudsters like this, so the real people couldn't get it. The person behind the scheme is a 29-year-old woman. She pled guilty to charges of wire fraud and money laundering, and she did that last December. A U.S. District Judge said at the sentencing, these were serious and terrible crimes. She stole from programs designed to help members of their community during the pandemic. Through the scheme, she personally received more than $2 million in fraudulent proceeds and spent the money on extravagant expenses such as luxury cars, lavish trips, cosmetic surgery, jewelry, and designer goods. She was relentless in her efforts to steal pandemic benefits throughout the entire duration of our national emergency, says the U.S. attorney. It is unconscionable that she funded a life of luxury by stealing millions in taxpayer funds that should have prevented local residents from being evicted in the winter. So that was also one of the things that she was scamming was the rent assistance program. Combating pandemic fraud is a priority for our district and will continue to work with our law enforcement partners to hold individuals accountable for exploiting a national crisis. From June of 2020 to early 2022, she personally submitted over 125 fraudulent applications, posing as a fake tenant, a fake landlord, and a fake business owner. And that was all with the U.S. Department of Treasury's Emergency Rental Assistance Program, according to records in the case. She received money from a myriad of pandemic assistance programs, including money administered by King County and the Paycheck Protection Program, or the PPP. In the scheme, she had more than 50 associates falsifying documents alongside of her. So this is quite an operation. And we pointed out before, people put this much work into ripping other people off might actually get someplace if they put that much work into working. Under the terms of the agreement, she will pay restitution in the amount of $2.7 million to the Treasury and a little over $500,000 to the U.S. Small Business Administration. She will forfeit $2 million, the proceeds that she personally obtained through the scheme. And along with that, and this is the painful part, she'll have to forfeit her Lexus and her Range Rover, both of which purchased with the fraudulent gains. I've done quite a few stories about people ripping off these programs. And I remember during that time, during 2020 and 2021, doing the stories about some guy went in, got a bunch of money, went out and bought a Lamborghini. So driving around in his Lamborghini. And then they decide to audit some of this stuff and figure out where the money's actually going. And I remember talking about this, and they were in such a hurry to shovel the money out the door that they didn't even bother checking the most basic things. So if someone claims to have 100 employees, they should then also have records of 100 employees. They should have payroll records. They should have tax records. Because if they're paying their employees payroll money, they're withholding payroll money and submitting it to the government. So when someone comes in and goes, I've got 100 employees, it should be real easy to say, oh, give us a list of the 100 employees along with their information, and then just cross-check that with another department. And the weird part was, I would do stories like that, and I would say that. And I actually had several people push back and go, Steve, if you need that money today, you haven't got time for them to be checking the employment records of all your employees for a day or two. What? Yeah, you do. If that's your only choice, trust me, you'll wait. So the government is offering to give you free money, and all you've got to do is confirm that you've got 100 employees. That should be really, really easy to do. And so I can tell you that there have been times where I've had direct employees working for me. And if somebody said, Steve, it's extremely important, you need to prove that you've got employees working for you right now, I'd say, oh, real easy. Call my accountant. I'll authorize him to release everything to you. What do you want to see? Tax records, payroll records? I got all that stuff. Of course I do, because I've got employees. And so for someone to claim that they need all this money for something, there should be some way to prove that the something is real. And so that's one of the biggest criticisms I had. I had no problem with them propping up businesses during those times. I had no problem with that. The problem I had was with the fact that they weren't checking anything. It was all on the honor system. I got bad news for you. If you're giving away money on the honor system to people who need it, you're going to get more fake applicants than real applicants. And so, yes, does it help to throw the book at somebody like this? Yeah, a little bit. Of course, you're throwing the book at them now in 2024, and some of this stuff happened back in 2020. So it's not going to discourage people in 2020, 21, 22, 23, because this right here didn't happen in time to teach any of those people lessons. So I'm glad they got somebody. I'm glad they got a conviction here. But the question is, will they see any of that money back? Because obviously they can go sell that Lexus and they can go sell that Range Rover. They're not going to get what was paid for those back. And then likewise, the rest of the money, $2.7 million, will they ever see that back? Probably not, because she spent it on things like lavish vacations and plastic surgery. So there you go. So Barbara, thanks for sending it. Leader of near $7 million pandemic fraud scheme sentenced to 5 years. Frank Summerall wrote that for KIRO. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. It isn't the mountains ahead to climb that wears you out. It's the pebble in your shoe.